So take me back, if you could, to last year, before we started working together. Where was the organization? What was that moment that created in you and in the board this recognition that there was work to be done?
We realized is that there were so many people who were saying different stories about who the Matriots are, who we were, what we served, why we're there, and which is awesome because we love that each person sees something in us that they believe they could get behind. But that therefore then dilutes the story that we have. How do we get them to work together? How do we clearly say what we do and what we don't do? What will we stand for? What won't we invest in? What tables will we not be part of? And it was getting more complicated in the way we were trying to describe our organization to funders and to our members, but then also to the general public. Um, and and I think that was a real tipping point for us in saying we need to get someone on board with us to help narrow the story, focus what we're doing, help us understand why we're here and in a clear way with the right words so that we can go out and say, this is what we're doing and present that unified story.
That's great. Was it in the beginning, were there people in the organization that were skeptical? Or were there things that you were anxious about or skeptical about when you looked at Storyforge as someone to work with?
Me personally, I don't have a background in organizational change. I did not necessarily understand, okay, what is the benefit of fixing our story? Like we need to fix ourselves, then we can fix our story. So I think if there was any hesitancy, it may have a little bit been from me because as we have very limited resources, where are we spending those resources of time, energy, and money? And are we doing it in a really thoughtful way? I felt like we might be doing it in reverse. But luckily, we had individuals on our board who had worked with Storyforge before, who had, really well-oiled machines, but then took that machine and were able to say, here's how it all functions together. Here's why getting the meaningful story helps. Here's how we can, really thoughtfully take these different viewpoints that people have and find the through line of what motivates us to do the work.
Can you kind of describe, in your own words, the work that we did together, and what about it was kind of most impactful to you?
So together we sat down and talked about, how we all view the organization. I think having this is maybe like an ancillary part of the work, perhaps, but that neutral outside knowledgeable individual to come in and facilitate conversation when there are such passionate engaged individuals around the table with their own viewpoints was super helpful because we all came in with our idea of this is who we envision ourselves being, and there's no real other way to see ourselves. By having a neutral party who came in at the very outset, we did that first level set of what are our ground rules and what are our expectations for what we're doing here together. And we went from those insights to really building what is high level, why do we exist? And then from there, what do we want to do in the world? The thing about our work is that we have polled people multiple times, oftentimes about the same thing. So it seems. What was different to me about the way that Storyforge did it are a few things. The first one is that, like I mentioned before, that asking really different populations how they interacted with us, what they see as our strengths, what they see as some of the challenges. That allows us to really get a more, almost like a 360 review. And that perspective was so insightful. Rather than asking the same people we've been asking, really being purposeful in the conversations with particularized groups of donors or engaged volunteers. And that was a question that I don't think has ever really been asked before. How important is this? Why is this a critical component of the Matriots work, or is it not?
Could you maybe speak to the process of engaging the board in the work?
When we started this work, we had 3 individual boards that never talked to each other. and we had me as sort of the hub in the spokes of these three boards. What we see as the result of that is our mission now is a trifold mission.
As we concluded our work, what did you have that you didn't have in the beginning?
The tangible things that we received, we received those insights, and we still pour into those and question those insights. And are we, we can't make everyone happy, but how will we use those insights to really guide our visionary processes over the next few years? The second thing that we left with that I think I rely on, I have a copy of it over here, is our framework, our Storyforge strategic framework. Our Storyforge strategic framework really clearly lays out those three missional pillars that we're working on. And again, like I mentioned, putting those values and principles in a single place for us all to see at any time, so that somebody doesn't say, don't the Matriots value this particular thing? On the measurable outcome side, so we had three boards. What this made us realize is that is too much administrative work. There's no need for that to happen. And so now we actually have two, still a small staff, still really engaged members, but we did not need to meet our missional work. The second thing that is a real tangible outcome for us is that we had been, on our endorsements work, we have been endorsing women now for 6 years. Now we actually have a value that is around that piece of our work, and would allow us to really critically think about how do we see our women behaving in the world of politics. May lead to us not endorsing some candidates or endorsing some who, weren't on our radar before, but they just are so uplifting of other women's voices that they need to be at the table. And that has been a tangible piece of the work.
And I wonder if you sit back as the CEO, thinking about kind of where you were a year and a half ago and where you are today with this clarity, with this story, with this framework, with the change, all the changes. What's different for you?
It's night and day for us. For me particularly, because I don't love being a people pleaser, but it is a part of my being. This framework and the work that we did together gave me clarity in order to say, this is who we are and this is who we're not. And I want us to have a broader space that we cover. We can't do it all. We shouldn't do it all. There are lots of amazing people doing other parts of this work. And having the strategic framework that I can use as a CEO to say, let's just all remember what we said we were doing, whether it's internal to the boards or it's external. It gives me something to stand on while still being clear and candid with the person across from me that their viewpoint is valid. It just might not be what we're doing right now.